Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. I'm Brian Linder. I'm here with Dan Sostek. Dan.
Howdy.
Dan's rocking the PennLive hoodie today. And I'm also here with Eric Epler. What's going on, my man?
Going all right. We're knee deep in hoops playoffs right now. So district titles are on the line over the next couple of days. So always an exciting time.
Yes, it is. So look, you guys know their voices now. And as we move forward in the podcast, you know who's talking. If you're a long-time listener, you already knew who they were. Look, it's interesting. Like I said, we got an interesting time here. We just had the last week we talked about Big 33 rosters, and now we have the East-West rosters are out. You know, a few things going on around the state. Quarterbacks, I've been watching these quarterbacks. Peyton Falzone or Falzoni, however you say it, out of Nazareth, seems to really be coming, doing a lot of work here in the all season. Our guy Gavin Sidwar, I think, recently announced his top 5. If I'm correct there, I don't remember who was in that. Dan, maybe you can pull that up while I'm talking. But, really those two kind of rose to the top of this next quarterback class in Pennsylvania. I still think there's a really good third out there with Samaj Bills, who was probably the more highly recruited kid 2 years ago when this process started for these guys or so. But he probably hasn't quite grown as big as Gavin or Peyton have, but he's still pretty talented. You guys saw him in the state title game. So I guess before we jump into East-West and all, any thoughts on these 3 quarterbacks here, guys? Because like I said, I just been watching them on Twitter and watching them evolve, and how we feeling about those guys rising to the top of the quarterback class. And if there's anybody else we need to be looking for.
Well, I mean, Sidwar, I know Rivals just bumped him up, I think, to a 4-star. And, we've always been really impressed with him. What he did against that Harrisburg defense was, early in the year was pretty special. And, that LaSalle team, they played St. Joe's Prep as tough as anybody did. I mean, I think you could have argued that 6A game was the state championship game. So I've obviously kind of a little more familiar with Sidwar in terms of seeing him than I was Peyton Falzone, but it is a pretty good class. And I think that, and his top 5 is Missouri, Syracuse, UCLA, Iowa, and Ole Miss. So Missouri would be interesting, right? Because that would be 3 PA quarterbacks in Columbia with Bo Pabule, Matt Zollers, and Gavin Sidwar, which maybe gives him a little bit of comfort. But, we've got some other ones too. We even have a local one who's with Division I offer now in Torrin Evans. So it's going to be a fun year to watch these QBs, because you don't always get a ton of QBs in PA, right? Like maybe there's 1 or 2 a year. Feels like we might have a handful 2025.
Yeah, T.D. Evans from Susquehanna Township recently got Akron, where Joe Moorhead is for you, former Penn State.
Michael Schuster.
Yeah, Mike Schuster. Epler brought up. Now, that being said, old Joe, I think, has got to win a few more games over at Akron to hang in there much longer. But now it's a good first offer for Torrin Evans. And we've had him on here. Super smart kid.
Yeah, if he doesn't go D1, would not be shocked if he goes Ivy League, which are pretty darn good as well.
The young guy out at St. Joe's Prep, too, Charlie Folk, has been getting some pretty good offers too, right?
Yeah, that's another one. He's not in their class.
He's only going to be a sophomore. So I'm just popping off thinking of these quarterbacks who are getting some attention across the state. And there's a couple young guys out west too, but Ep, I know you had some thoughts there.
Yeah, for me, Sidwar was surprising to me at how it worked out with the PA Football Writers All-State team. Folks was actually the player of the year in 6A. And that surprised me because I thought Sidwar had a pretty good chance of being that guy, not only for what he did against St. Joe's Prep and obviously led him to a victory there in the regular season and damn near in the playoffs too. He almost duplicated. But just the kind of quarterback he is. He's kind of that, you don't get many in high school. You get a lot of guys obviously who are extremely talented, but you see a different level of leadership with Sidwar. And I think he's the most sort of polished, if you will, quarterback. Maybe not the most athletic, when you're talking about Beals in there and you're talking about folks, but Sidwar is just one of those gamers that you want on your roster. I don't care what any level you're at. So that was a little bit of a surprise to me. Obviously, Folk had a tremendous year too. They win it again, 3 straight for the Hawks in 6A. But yeah, I think that for me, having watched Torrin Evans play now for 3 full years and just his development, he is a perfect fit for the Mid-American Conference. I mean, if you give that kid who Dan mentioned is smart as a whip, he really is intelligent. He's a great kid to talk to, smart. He's definitely could be a great Ivy League quarterback. But if he gets in a good system, and the Mid American is a lot about offense and gets that early kind of jump in one of those programs like an Akron, man, I think he could have an unbelievable college career.
Would you say it'd be similar to, obviously they haven't had exactly the same careers, but like what happened with Matty Johnson, at
Exactly, yeah, because Matty Johnson was more of a gunslinger kind of kid, that Brett Favre-esque kind of player. But he got the reins at Bowling Green. He got his shot, an injury. He stepped in and he never let it go. Yeah. And I think Evans is perfect for one of those offensive schemes in America, showing up and surprising everybody year to year. And it does. It changes. It went from Northern Illinois to Bowling Green, and Akron's had some of these offenses too. Western Michigan has had an incredible offense for a while. So, yeah, I think it's a perfect fit for him. And congrats to him, because I don't think I think we'll all agree nobody's really worked harder than that kid.
No, because I was going to say, what's impressed with me so much about Torrin is just how much better he's gotten each and every year. Because I think I've told you guys, but I covered one of his early games, and it was like you could see the talent, but it was not pretty. He has had to learn the job on the fly pretty much. He's been a starter since the freshman year pretty much. They threw him right in there. And I think some kids, the early struggles might have broke him a little bit. I think it did the opposite for Torrin. I think it's so important to be, in this world where you have to produce right away, to be able to learn from your mistakes and kind of use them to your advantage and become a better player because of them. That's what he's done his entire career. And I wouldn't be shocked if he's, in the running for player of the year in the Mid-Penn next year, because he had to he'll still have Jarrett Kern with him. But yeah, he just keeps getting better, which is always a good sign.
Yeah, like I said, super smart too. I mean, look, he's going to bring the intelligence you don't get into the Ivy League type intelligence. You can tell immediately talking to the kids. So that's going to be an advantage for any quarterback. We were talking to Chad Henne on here a couple of weeks ago. If you guys didn't hear our Chad Henne podcast, definitely go back and listen to that. But I've always kind of marveled at how these guys get handed the playbooks in the pros that are so big and thick. And like, I listened to Peyton Manning one time talk about just like what he looked at pre-snap, how he changed, what calls were made, and everything that happened like in a split 1 second window. And I'm like, I don't think I'm a dumb guy. Now other people would argue that I am a moron, but I think I'm fairly sharp, and I don't think I could process it like those guys. So it's the better you can do that, the better you are.
We also didn't mention Matt Sig, who, I mean, we all think is going to be a safety at the next level, but in terms of watching quarterbacks next year, he's going to be a fun one to still keep watching.
Yeah, he's definitely going to play safety, but yeah, he'll wrap up a tremendous career. I'll tell you another thing, you guys kind of switching gears a little bit when you brought up like Matt Johnson, who's at San Diego State now, offensive coordinator.
Yeah, he's OC now at San Diego State. Yep.
We could probably spend a whole podcast breaking down like Michael Schuster's at Akron, Brett and Mary, and obviously who coached in the Mid-Penn is now the head coach at Sacramento State, which is significant because he's been one of the more talented assistants across the country with his go-go offense. And Sacramento State is going to put some money into the program, but I know there's a guy, Epler, there's a coach now under Mike Vick over at Norfolk State, who's from Susquehanna Township, and the name's escaping me right now, but we got a lot of coaches too right now at significant positions in the college level.
Jojo Heaton's probably on his way to becoming one. I know he's a scout right now for Texas A&M, which is a pretty darn good gig, I think.
Yeah, Joe Heaton's son from Susquehanna Township, the coach there. We got a lot of guys with significant coaching positions right now at the college level who are from the Keystone State and have those ties. So that's really interesting to keep an eye on too. We could probably do a whole podcast about that. So Therefore, there's probably 3 or 4 that you could probably name off the top of your head still. Speaking of coaching positions, we did have a significant hire here in our area last week when it was announced that Jamie Thomas, former NFL player, Harrisburg native, was hired as the head coach at Redland. Now, Jamie has been bouncing around, I think, in McDevitt, and Harrisburg, and Susquehanna Township as an assistant the last couple of years. Runs his big man camp. I know every year, which Jamie, if you hear this, I think it would be great to go out there one year to his big man camp and just talk to some of the big guys about how they handle the all season versus 7-on-7s. But he gets hired, and Redland's been pretty bad, for pretty bad for a long time. Now, their basketball program was so down a few years ago that there was the whole situation where they told Cedar Cliff basically they couldn't score against them. They had to hold the ball after Cedar Cliff beat them by like 60 in a game, and they had to hold the ball and not beat them too bad. They made a basketball change, and the name of their basketball coach is escaping me too right now. He's done a nice job there. I mean, they were not. That was a team that was scoring like nine. I don't even know how they did this year, but the last 2 years, he took a team scoring like 19 points a game.
They lost a lot of their guys this year. It's kind of a rebuild year, but
Yeah.
But the last 2 years, he did a nice job. He really did, taking a team that was really devoid of much of anything and making them competitive. So I don't know. I don't know what works in Redland. I know they lost a couple of their better players to like lacrosse, Eric, over the last couple of years, and they've had some strong programs. So.
Yeah, I talked with Jamie briefly after the hire and got a couple interesting tidbits from him. One of them was that he applied for a bunch of jobs too. I think he applied when Susquehanna Township opened. He applied for that job. I think he said he also applied for CD East. But I asked him why. He's a relatively young guy. He's been a fellow in the NFL's programs. He's worked with Susquehanna Township in the past, but he says he wants to prove, that he can that his ideas as a coach work. We've seen the results with the defensive line guys. He's worked with Anthony Smith and guys like that. But one point that I thought was pretty interesting, and he said, you quote me on this, is he said, I think that the Keystone Division is there for the taking. And I mean, as you look at it, he's not wrong. Like Mechanicsburg is losing a ton of talent. Hershey's always solid, but it's not like without Bishop McDevitt there's not exactly a big bad wolf in the Keystone Division anymore. And we all know in high school football, so much of these, especially the regular season games, are won via the trenches and won via the offensive line. And if Jamie can, impart that wisdom that got him to Maryland, got him to the NFL, that he does at all these camps, that's going to be a big difference maker in that Keystone Division. And he's right. It is there for the taking. They had a pretty good running back this year, Brady Seiler. They just didn't have, they didn't have the passing game to go along with it. They didn't really get that many stops, but they've been somewhat competitive, in some of these games. It just feels like they need a little push. At the very least, he's, just having the label former NFL player coaching at Redland should bring some excitement. And yeah, I mean, anytime we get a new kind of infusion of talent, that's always exciting.
Eric, he mentioned Brady Seiler. I think that's kind of been the one thing for Redland. They've had like one guy who was pretty good every year. Like a couple years ago was Parker Lawler.
Mhm.
But again, he's a guy who decided the football program was headed nowhere, and he was really good at lacrosse. He was one of the kids I thought of when I mentioned it. He left. He just started focusing on lacrosse. He was a pretty darn good player for him too. They've had one or two guys that you could maybe do something with or build around a little bit, but they got to get more out. Obviously, talent wise, maybe having a former NFL guy step in maybe gets the hallway shaken up a little bit, gets a few more out for them. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really been in the hallways at Redland too much. I know a couple years ago they had a running back named Josh Johnson who was really good. You might remember him. He went on to Lincoln and had a pretty solid career there, I believe. So they've had a running back or two throughout the years, but they've also been really bad. So it's an uphill.
The last District 3 playoff appearance was 2014. So that's how long they haven't been in the playoffs. 12 years. So I was still in college last time. They actually lost to Bishop McDevitt in that game too. So kind of a tie there. I mean, that's the other thing too, is Jamie's probably pretty familiar with, just being a McDevitt guy too. There's talent in the West Shore. It just feels like a lot of it always ends up at Cedar Cliff. in the football program. So
So this is going to be interesting when he's got his work cut out for him. Now,
Yes, obviously it has to come in and, there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm with Jamie taking over. That's great for Redland, to be honest with you. I think he's partially right when talking about the Keystone and sort of being wide open. Year after year, one of these teams, with devoid of Bishop McDevitt now, being in the Commonwealth, sliding over, you're still going to have to deal with, two or three teams kind of upstarts. This year it was Mechanicsburg. Lower Dauphin was a playoff team. Occasionally, Northern is right around, maybe a couple of dudes short. Shippensburg is obviously a perennial playoff team now in the Keystone Division. So you've got teams that are solid, but maybe don't have, maybe you're missing two or three dudes. We always talk about you need dudes to win consistently in the mid pen. And and Dan's right. I mean, Red Lane is probably 5 to 6 dudes, from being in that upper echelon post. Now, you don't really know what's coming down the road, obviously, between the JV program and kids walking in. But their trench play obviously should be tremendous. And they've always had 2 or 3 good linemen. But it just hasn't been enough. I mean, you've got to find those guys, and that's really the task for Thomas. And I think you'll probably get more bodies out because Jamie Thomas, former NFL guy, is now your coach. I think he's going to be recruiting in the hallways every time he steps in the building to get guys out. And who knows? I mean, it's been a long time. It really has. And we've seen these sort of lulls at places. We saw it at Middletown. We saw it at Chambersburg. These really solid football teams. The Redland was always a solid football team, when I played back in the, in the Stone Age. And it was just, Redland was tough to beat. And somewhere along the line, the line turned a little bit, and these guys started going and playing other sports. And Redland's always been a great baseball, high school, but that hasn't changed. So it's just a matter of getting guys out and obviously getting them up to speed. And I think Thomas will do a great job. I mean, he's got a lot of chops. Obviously, he's got the resume at every level of football. So I'm excited to see what he can do. It's always nice when you've have that lull to kind of, have a breath of fresh air come in and kind of change things around. So I think that's what Redland needs.
we talked last week too. Chambersburg's open still. Martin Luther's out there. CD East is still open, which is interesting to me because we know they have some guys coming back or supposed to come back, like Zach Brown. He's probably he's one of the top returning linebackers in the state, talent wise. Should be coming back there, but they have athletes every year. Lance Dean, obviously their coach, who trains Micah Parts, who, by the way, was up at Penn State training Katron Allen here, and has also worked with Abdul Carter.
did you see Lance was in the NFL Rookie Watch tweeted out some workout film of Abdul Carter, and Lance was right front and center there.
Yeah, we've done a couple stories of him working with Abdul Carter. We probably need to do another one about the work he did with him heading into the draft here, with Abdul being talked about this no more. But obviously Lance moved over. He's now the athletic director at Susquehanna Township. He put a lot, Lance had some good years at CD East. He had some lean years too, but every year he did a good job of getting guys off to college. They did a really nice job there. So there are athletes there. There's talent there. They still don't have a coach. That's definitely one for everybody to kind of keep an eye on. And we probably need to be circling back to and trying to figure out what's going on there, because it is getting close to, I saw one of their former coaches kind of post about it's kind of getting close to spring year.
Yeah.
And they don't have a leader of that program. And, I think a lot of their athletic director, DeWine Lee and stuff like that, but it is pretty tough here playing in the Mid-Penn Commonwealth, which might be the toughest division in the state.
Yeah.
So,
and then we also have James Buchanan leaving the Mid-Penn too, which just all this change it's changed these.
we're here, and another school might leave too.
Yeah. I mean, the James Buchanan, just a quick thing on that is that I kind of get it for James Buchanan. It's just been a real struggle. They obviously left the Mid-Penn before and came back. They just never have the numbers. It's like they tend to, every coach I've talked to, they've always had good coaches there. It's hard to get numbers at James Buchanan, especially, they're not a 1A classification school, but they have roster's the size of 1A and everything. So maybe a switch to the York Adams League will benefit them a little bit. But, I wonder how that domino effect is going to affect scheduling and things like that. So,
At least play schools with same size rosters. Like they could play like Harrisburg, right?
yeah.
Harrisburg only has like 30 guys.
Yeah. I think 30 might be more than James Buchanan has some years. So,
That would be not a good day for James Buchanan if they ever had to play there.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.
All right, so we went over some coaching, went over some quarterbacks, talked some statewide stuff. East-West rosters came out last week. You want to give us a rundown, maybe thought guys locally, where in Central Pennsylvania, as we've noted before?
I think it's actually going to be fun. We talked about, Lance Dean's years at the entire East roster for the big school game. Pretty much the entire backfield is CD East guys. And I like the fact that Jared Porter, obviously the talented running back and defensive back who missed most of the year with an injury, actually is in the backfield. And handing him the ball a few times is his quarterback, Damaj Jala. And then, of course, on the outside, you got Santana Young, obviously an all-state guy, had a tremendous season for them. So, yeah, that'll be fun to watch the East roster in the big school game. We're going to have 2 games the week before the Big 33. That's Sunday, which is May 19th. You'll have the small school all-star game at noon, and then the big school, which is classes 4 through 6. Small school is 1 through 3. And that game will be at 5:00. So, yeah, that's the most interesting thing to me, to see those guys there. And, of course, on the West, Eddie Corkery, the state college quarterback, will be piloting the West offense. So it's good to see a lot of these guys who are all state and maybe didn't quite make the cut for Big 33, get East-West roster spots. We just had a promotion. JJ Torres, the offensive lineman for Bishop McDevitt, has just been added to the big school East-West game. So that's some recent news. And there'll be more of those as guys sort of bow out, maybe thinking about reporting to college a little early or, not risking injury or something like that. So there'll be more promotions, if you will, even for that and the Big 33 game too. The biggest surprise for me, Dan and I were talking about before, was, Zahir Mathis, the, extremely talented and gifted defensive end for Imhotep, who's on everybody's radar as maybe the top recruit in the 2025 class, is actually on the East-West big school roster. So we'll see. I don't know if there's a chance he's going to play in that, but he is on the roster.
Yeah, it's kind of funny he didn't make Big 33. I wonder what that's about, because talent-wise, he's up there with that. I'm looking at the rosters now. We had this talk last year. Like there's some guys on here that definitely, we talked about Quincy Brannon, who I think is one of the better cover corners in the state from Harrisburg. He makes it in the big school game. Declan Clancy from Townships, there's a linebacker. A little undersized, but he was a kid who was like, 100 tackle, 1,800-yard rushing kid the last couple years.
Yep.
Mick Johnson, the running back for Bonner Prindy, was one of the best players in the state championship overall. He makes the game. Good to see him get a shot there.
There are actually 2 Josh Smiths on the West large school roster, but Josh Smith he had
Mechanicsburg.
Yeah, he probably had an argument for the bit. Like his numbers were pretty awesome this year. 2-way player too. He's another guy. Gunnar Hiller, your guy, who's coming off a District 3 heavyweight wrestling championship, made the team as well.
Well, you look, I think for all PA, I think I may have put Wyatt Maines on there, the big lineman from Hollidaysburg. Flew under the radar. He's a big kid. He's really good. Another name that pops out to me here, he's really been one of the best linemen in the state the last 3 years, is Jack Gachenko from North Allegheny. Yeah. I wouldn't argue with you one bit if you'd have put him on the Big 33 team. I think he's that good. He's a monster. And then Braden White, the wide receiver from Thomas Jefferson, who I really thought was one of the best in the state overall. Again, I could have easily seen him. I got him on All-PA first or maybe second team, but I could have easily seen him on the Big 33 game too. So it's a good roster. And they tell Mitchell is a kid who I know made, was it Post Gazette's Fabulous 22 or whatever, who had a really good year at linebacker too. And then, hey, Mark Harrington from Altoona making it a linebacker. He was actually last year, I think, was our all area punter because he averaged like 45 yards or something crazy a punt.
That kid's a gamer. I always love seeing kids like that, that aren't on these teams that are winning a lot of games, but they leave it all out on that football. He played quarterback for them this year too. Like that kid did everything for that program.
John Wetzel, your safety from Greater Latrobe, making it. He was an underrated kid probably across the state who was a really good player. I think he ended up going to one of those MAC schools like a Miami of Ohio or something like that. Really good player there. Nehemiah Ewell's a guy we like running back. And I mean, hell, you could argue that he was as good as any running back Harrisburg had this year. And they had, one, obviously, Messiah Mickens, who really did heat up down. But that stretch Messiah was probably the guy, but he was really good, and he's going to play linebacker. It looks like so.
Premier Williams too, well deserved. Guys been a consistent contributor for 4 straight district titles. Not many people in Mid Penn history can probably say that.
And they had 3 Williams brothers come through Harrisburg. I think Kyrell and Kyle. Obviously, we know Kyle now, as I said, maybe Morgan State playing running back. He originally signed with Temple. I really loved his skill set. I think if he, gets everything going into MEAC, he could be a killer there because he's good enough to be a slot wide receiver, but he's also a heck of a running back. So I don't see how, I think he would have been good at Temple if he'd have hung it out there. But then Chimera, all of those kids started all 4 years at Harrisburg. They started as freshmen. So
I think Cal probably just knew if it's one of those kids, he could just trust them immediately and he put them in.
Epler, real quick, I'm looking at the small school rosters. Carson Nagel's a name that's been putting up numbers at Bald Eagle area quarterback, I think, all 4 years. I always think you young kids who might listen to this, but older kids know, I always think of Browning Nagel when I see that, which Browning was not a great pick for the Jets, but he was a pretty good college player. But Carson Nagel put up numbers for Bald Eagle area quarterback. It's one of the more productive quarterbacks in the state. And then Eric Doru, running back from South Park, also a really good player over the last couple of years. And then the athlete Hamilton Gates had monster numbers for Bishop Guilfoyle. Anything else with the small school teams here, guys?
Well, Jesse Nagel will be coaching the West Side, so that'll be fun. 2 Nagels running the ship there, 1 at quarterback. So that'll be a fun thing for me too. Noah Doy getting the nod. Camp Hill, just jack of all trades. He's probably played about 90 different positions for the Lions in his career.
Just came in second in district wrestling too.
Yeah, if there's a tougher 5'8" football player out there, I haven't seen him. Doy just obviously deserves it, and he'll treat this like the Super Bowl, just like he's done with everything that he's done in his entire Camp Hill career. So he'll be out. He'll be out to play hard in this one. And then you got the Steel High guys, which is, Jim Evans will be a wideout for the East. And then he's got a couple of teammates that'll play alongside with him. Nazir Fuller was named as cornerback, and Yamir Caesar, also defensive backfield. So there'll be 3 Steel High guys there. So, yeah, it's a solid roster. I mean, I was looking at the small school. Bo Sheptock for Danville has been a multi-year All-State kid. He'll be a safety in this one. And, of course, you'll have a couple other guys, too, that'll really be able to ball out in this one. So the small school is always, you always turn to kind of the running backs and we've seen Austin Johnson, what he can do, the running back from Muncie. So that'll be a fun ride.
I think he was like Austin Johnson, a 1A or 2A player of the year for the Riders pick from Muncie running back, because he was like a 2,000 yard, 100+ tackle kid, I think. Gavin Harold, the Harold brothers, his brother was a really good quarterback out of Penn Cambria, put up a lot of good numbers at wide receiver. That's jumping off at me, looking to Troy Cunningham, the other Cunningham brothers. I think his brothers in the Big 33 game. Both of those kids were really good from South Park linemen.
I know the Anvil Cleona people really speak highly of the John Shea kid, the defensive end. He made the roster. Also love West Catholic's quarterback, name being Kal-El. The Superman. Parents must be Superman fans because that's Superman's real name. So a couple other names there.
You talk about defensive ends too on that West roster. Henry Barbish, I think he signed with like a MAC school. He's like a 6'5", 225 kid. Van Cavals is a kid who I put on all PA. I kind of became aware of him 2 or 3 years ago. He's at Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, but he had a game where he played quarterback for them too, by the way. And he had like 5 or 6 touchdowns. And I put him on our statewide players top performances list. And he messaged me, he's like, oh, by the way, I had 12 tackles and 4 sacks in that game too. And you go watch him at defensive end. He's a big kid. They got some really good defensive ends on that team, man. College players. And then Jace Ferguson at safety too, Eric, Central Clarion.
Yeah.
He led his team to a state title appearance playing quarterback and safety. We put him on all PA too. He was one of the best. I don't care, regardless of classification. He was one of the most productive players in PA. And then you flip it over to the East roster. Give Noah Shimko, I think, just from Mount Carmel, just won your Mr. Football Lineman of the Year for the lower classification. So Cameron Kears Danville, very productive career linebacker. I always get excited. This East-West rosters, I always think they've done a really nice job the last couple of years getting these guys out there who have had some really nice runs. So this will be a fun game. A couple fun games here with the big and small school East-West.
I agree. Both will be at Cumberland Valley Chapman Field, just like the Big 33 a week later. So, yeah, get out and watch some football.
You legitimately, like I said, there's 2 defensive ends there who are like 6'5", 240, 225, 230. I mean, you might see a kid or two out here that ends up getting a shot in the league or even plays in the league. So it will be an exciting game. So, guys, what else we got to talk about? Anything else before we go? We're into basketball. Before you guys know it, you guys will be out at, is it at the Giant Center again this year for basketball, or did they move it out?
I'm heading there tonight.
Yep, we'll both be in Chocolate Town. The 2 Trinity teams, you got Owen Schlager playing for this guy. I found out his brother Max, who is a pretty good linebacker, played at Dartmouth. He's no longer playing football. He's now playing rugby at Dartmouth. Turns out juggling an engineering degree in Ivy League school is kind of difficult when you're playing football. So he seems like he would be very well suited to play rugby, I think. I think he'd be
yeah. Absolutely.
He was a heck of a player there. Really helped turn that Trinity program around there under Jordan Hill, that first year or so. He was a key Max Slugger. So, well, look, guys, I think we got a podcast. Josh Oswalt texted me and asked me if we actually went under 30, did we get fined or something? So, no, we don't, but we're supposed to do at least 30. And there you have it. Tell them how to find you on social media.
I'm at 3Jacker on X.
Dan, tell them how to find you.
Dan_Sostek.
I'm at Sports by B. Linder. Our producer Megan's at Savvy Literate. Go check out her stuff too. She's got all kinds of stuff going on. Until next week, check us out, PennLive.com. We'll see you now.
Bone, joint, and muscle injuries, they can happen without warning. That's why UPMC Orthopedic Care provides convenient walk-in access at our injury clinics throughout the region. No appointments are needed, just walk in for expert evaluation and exceptional care by our team of orthopedic specialists. Clinics are located in Carlisle, Lidditz, Harrisburg, and Enola. For directions and hours or to learn more, visit upmc.com/injuryclinic.